Listen carefully, because what I am about to tell you will fundamentally shatter everything you thought you knew about the universe. For 10,000 years the Galactic Empire ruled with an iron fist, crushing civilizations, enslaving entire species, and laughing, oh how they laughed, at the notion that anyone could ever challenge their supreme authority. But here's the thing that the mighty overlords never quite grasps. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest weapons. Sometimes it's the one with absolutely nothing left to lose. My name is Torvin Kess, and I was an archives keeper for the Empire's historical repository, stationed on the orbital station Magnificus Prime. Yes, I know what you're thinking. An archives keeper? How terrifyingly mundane. But patience, my friend. Patience is a virtue that the Empire systematically destroyed in every species they conquered, and that right there was their fatal mistake. The morning everything changed started like any other morning. The artificial sun simulation hummed its annoying little tune. The crystallized walls gleamed with that sickening perfection that Empire architects loved. And I organized 300,000 holographic documents about conquered worlds. Thrilling stuff, really. My supervisor, Admiral Morant, had the personality of a neutron star and about as much warmth. He strutted through the archives with his characteristic sneer, his silver armor clinking with each step, his eyes burning with that special kind of arrogance that only comes from centuries of unchecked dominance. "Kess," he barked, his voice cutting through the quiet like a plasma blade. "Status report. Now." I turned slowly, and yes, I did this intentionally to annoy him, and offered what I hoped was an innocent smile. "Admiral Morant, all systems operational. All historical records properly catalogued, cross-referenced and secured behind 18 layers of encryption technology that would take a supercomputer approximately 4,000 years to penetrate." Vex leaned closer, his mandibles clicking with irritation. As a member of the Viran species, that clicking usually meant impending violence. "I don't care about technical specifications, you insufferable archive rat. I received a transmission yesterday. One of our outer colony stations, observation point 73 to be precise, went silent. Completely dark. No signals, no distress calls, nothing. And before you bore me with your predictable questions, yes, I've confirmed it wasn't equipment failure. Every monitoring station that tracked that facility is reporting the same thing, dead air. Now, here's where most sentient beings would feel fear. Real, genuine, spine-tingling fear. But I had spent 43 years in that archive, reading through the conquest reports, studying the behavioral patterns of subjugated species, and I had discovered something absolutely fascinating. The Empire never invaded anyone. They simply arrived, showed off their technology, demonstrated their military superiority, and everyone surrendered. No resistance, no rebellion, no real fighting for the past 8,000 years. That seemed unlikely. "Where is this observation point located?" I asked, already accessing the star charts projected above my workstation. "Sector 97, Outer Rim," Vex replied, his patience clearly running paper-thin. "Remote region, barely populated. We established the station to monitor an unremarkable little planet called Terra 5, where some primitive species lives. Nothing significant, nothing threatening, until 3 days ago when they, apparently, decided to become threatening. My heart, that biological organ that still functioned despite all the cybernetic upgrades the Empire had forced upon me, began racing. I had read about Terra 5. In fact, I specifically remembered the conquest report filed approximately 200 years prior. The report had been written by Commander Rax Tillis, and it described the native species, the Tarallians, as utterly pathetic, possessing no organized military capability, and so docile that even our lowest-ranked soldiers could manage the entire population single-handedly. The report also mentioned something else: patience. The Tarallians had approached the Empire's arrival with a question rather than weapons. They asked, in broken imperial standard, why? Not how did you find us or how can we fight you, but simply why. They wanted to understand what the Empire wanted, what they sought to gain from conquest, and what purpose served this endless expansion. Commander Rax had found the questions so absurd that he had archived the encounter in the ridicule section of historical documents. "Pull up everything we have on Terra 5, I commanded, speaking with a confidence that shocked even myself. "Right now. Full records. All communications, everything from the initial contact until now. Vex stared at me, with the kind of expression usually reserved for someone who had just suggested that maybe the Empire wasn't actually perfect. You don't give me orders, Kess. I give you orders, but since you've somehow managed to tickle my curiosity with that surprisingly authoritative tone, go ahead. Retrieve the information. I didn't need to be told twice. My fingers flew across the holographic interface with practiced precision. Files streamed before me. Reports, sensor data, communication logs, and as I read, a picture began forming. A picture that explained everything. The Tarallians had, over the course of 2 centuries, observed the Empire's pattern. They had studied every conquest. They had noted the arrogance, the predictability, the assumption that superior technology automatically meant victory. While the Empire had been celebrating its dominance, the Tarallians had been developing something far more sophisticated than weapons. They had been developing strategy. 200 years of patience. Admiral, I said slowly, feeling the weight of what I was about to reveal. The signal. The one telling you that observation point 73 went dark, it didn't come from our monitoring stations. What do you mean? Vex's mandibles stopped clicking. That was never a good sign. I mean, the signal came from Tara 5. They didn't destroy the station. They disabled it. They shut down every transmitter, every backup system, and every emergency beacon. And then here's where it gets interesting. They broadcast a message on an encrypted channel. A channel that uses an encryption algorithm developed 1700 years ago by the legendary strategist Miros Ven. An algorithm that the Empire declared unbreakable. Vex leaned back, processing this information. His expression shifted from arrogant confidence to something resembling actual concern. They encrypted a message to us, using our own ancient algorithms. Why would they do that if not to communicate something? I pulled up the decrypted message, and my entire understanding of the universe tilted on its axis. The text was simple, elegant, and utterly terrifying to the Empire. We are ready. After 200 years of observation, we understand your patterns, your assumptions, your weaknesses. Today we stop being the conquered. Today the patient ones finally speak. The message ended with coordinates and a timestamp. 12 hours from that moment, Terra 5 would launch simultaneous attacks on every Empire installation within 3 sectors. Not just observation point 73. 17 stations. Hundreds of warships stationed for refueling and resupply. All of it. Impossible, Vex whispered. And for the first time in my entire existence, I heard something in his voice that I had never expected to hear from an Empire admiral. He sounded scared. And that's when the alarm started screaming. The station shook. It's not a gentle tremor or some minor mechanical hiccup, but a violent, bone-jarring convulsion that sent me crashing into the holographic display. My archives keeper reflexes kicked in. I immediately initiated the emergency backup protocols, protecting 200 centuries worth of historical data from corruption. Because let's face it, if the Galactic Empire was about to collapse, somebody needed to make sure someone remembered how it all went down. Admiral Vex was already screaming into his communications device before I hit the ground. All battle stations. Red alert. I want every weapon system online in 30 seconds. Get me the sector commander. Get me the Emperor himself if you have to. This is Admiral Morant issuing Priority 1 commands. But here's the thing about Priority 1 commands. They only work when someone is actually listening on the other end. And based on the silence that greeted Vex's frantic orders, nobody was listening anymore. I pulled myself up, my joints protesting with the kind of aches that come from multiple cybernetic implants, and accessed the external sensor feeds. What I saw made me understand why the almighty Admiral Morant suddenly looked like someone had stolen his uniform, his authority, and his entire reason for existing. 17 Empire stations were under simultaneous assault, not from the expected direction. No, that would have been far too predictable. The Tarallians had studied the Empire's defensive positioning for 2 centuries, so naturally they attacked from the blind spots. The directions where the Empire never bothered placing significant defenses because they simply assumed no one would ever be stupid enough to attack there. The attack patterns were flawless, coordinated, surgical, each strike targeted, not the military installations themselves, but the supply lines, the communication relays, the power distribution networks. The Tarallians weren't trying to destroy the Empire's firepower, they were trying to cripple its ability to respond. Magnificus Prime taking enemy fire, someone screamed through the communications network. Then another voice, Defense Grid Theta is down. Repeat, Defense Grid Theta is completely offline. Vex's face had transformed into something resembling a portrait of pure panic. His mandibles weren't clicking anymore. They had stopped functioning entirely. Activate emergency protocols, he commanded, his voice now lacking its previous arrogance. Begin evacuation procedures. All non-essential personnel to the escape shuttles. Now, move, go, go. I smiled. Actually, genuinely smiled. Because here's where the joke becomes even funnier. The Tarallians had accounted for that too. Admiral, I said calmly, walking toward the central display where the tactical map now showed dozens of hostile contacts moving toward our position. I don't think we'll be leaving. What are you talking about? Vex turned to me, desperation burning in his eyes. I'm talking about the fact that the Tarallians didn't just disable our stations. They've also positioned hunter-killer ships at every major jump point in this sector. Every escape route has been cut off. Every backup plan has been anticipated. Every contingency plan was already considered and neutralized before we even knew we were under attack. The Admiral staggered backward, his confident posture collapsing like a structure missing its foundation. That's impossible. They're primitives, savages. They shouldn't even possess faster-than-light technology. I accessed the communication logs and pulled up records of every transmission the Tarallians had received over the past 2 centuries. They didn't develop FTL technology, Admiral. They traded for it. I'm looking at transaction records right now. The Tarallians have been secretly purchasing advanced technology from at least 14 different black market sources throughout the Outer Rim, all using Empire currency obtained through legitimate trade arrangements that they had established centuries ago. Vex stared at me, with the kind of expression usually reserved for someone watching their entire universe crumble, which, coincidentally, was exactly what was happening. How? He whispered. How did they accomplish this without our intelligence agencies detecting anything? Because they were patient, I said, and I could hear the satisfaction in my own voice. While the Empire was busy conquering new species, enslaving populations and writing conquest reports about how magnificent we were, the Tarallians were taking notes. They observed that we always expected resistance from beings we had just conquered. We were paranoid about rebellions. We stationed massive security forces around subjugated populations. I gestured at the tactical display, where the assault was intensifying. But the Tarallians? They didn't rebel. They didn't stage any uprisings. They didn't even grumble very loudly about their subjugation. They simply cooperated. They worked within the system. They followed every law, paid every tax, and submitted to every inspection. The Empire never considered them a threat, because they had already decided that patience was weakness. Another explosion rocked the station. The lights flickered. Somewhere deep in the facility, I heard the sound of structural integrity beginning to fail. We had maybe 30 minutes before the station became a floating tomb. Your tactical assessment, Vex said, his voice now frighteningly steady. We're going to die here, aren't we? I checked the sensor feeds one more time, watching as the Tarallian assault ships methodically destroyed every escape vessel that launched from the station. Absolutely. No doubt whatsoever, we are well and truly finished. But here's where my story gets really interesting. As we stood there, watching the end of an empire that we had both served, I couldn't help but laugh. Not a bitter laugh or a laugh born from despair, but a genuine wholehearted laugh that came from understanding the absolute irony of the situation. What could possibly be funny right now? Vex demanded, his mandibles finally beginning to click again, though now from shock rather than anger. Everything, I exclaimed. The Empire spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of overwhelming force, military superiority, and technological dominance. We conquered hundreds of species. We enslaved billions of sentient beings. We achieved the pinnacle of galactic civilization. And we were defeated, absolutely destroyed by a people we never even bothered to truly understand. The Admiral actually considered this for a moment. Then, to my absolute shock, he began laughing as well. Not the laugh of a broken man, but the laugh of someone who finally comprehended a cosmic joke. We trained them to be patient, he said, shaking his head in wonder. Every time we crushed a rebellion, we taught the next generation that resistance was futile. Every conquest without significant resistance reinforced our belief in our own invincibility. Every species that immediately surrendered made us more confident that we were unstoppable. And the Tarallians learned the greatest lesson of all, I continued. They learned that patience is the ultimate weapon. Time is the one resource that even the most advanced civilization cannot purchase or replicate. The final communication came through the station's deteriorating systems. It was a message from the Tarallian command ship, broadcast on all frequencies, addressed not just to us but to every surviving Empire installation in the sector. We are the Tarallians. For 200 years we have waited. For 200 years we have learned. Today we teach. The age of conquest through force has ended. The age of strategy through patience has begun. To every enslaved species listening to this transmission, you are now free. The message repeated on every channel, every frequency, every communication band the Empire had ever used. And as I listened to it echo through the dying station, I realized that Admiral Vex Morant and I had just witnessed something that would reshape the entire galaxy. We had witnessed the moment when patience finally lost its patience with oppression. The explosion that killed us both came approximately 6 minutes later. It was swift, relatively painless, and thoroughly ironic. Two representatives of the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known, destroyed by a species we had literally classified as inferior. But here's the truly fascinating part, the part that makes this story worth telling. Admiral Morant was wrong about one thing. He claimed we would be forgotten, swallowed up by the chaos of the Empire's collapse. He was wrong. Because I had spent those final 6 minutes doing exactly what I had been trained to do, archiving. My cybernetic implants transmitted every conversation, every realization, every moment of our understanding to a secure Imperial server located 17 light-years away. The server was protected by encryption algorithms. Even the Tarallians couldn't break immediately. And somewhere, in some hidden location, in some secure facility that the new Tarallian coalition hadn't yet discovered, my account waits. My testimony. My story. Evidence of how an empire fell not to superior weapons, but to superior patience. So here's the thing about civilizations that believe they are invincible. They usually are, right up until the moment they're not. They usually do command the galaxy, right up until something patient enough, clever enough, and determined enough decides that conquest can happen in ways other than weapons. The Galactic Empire ruled for 10,000 years. The Tarallians waited for 200, and that patience transformed them from the conquered into the conquerors. But the real question, the one that still makes me glad I archived this story, is this: what will the Tarallians do now that they hold the power? Will they repeat the cycle? Will they become just another tyrannical regime crushing the next species with superior force? Or will they remember their own patience and teach the galaxy something it desperately needed to learn? That is a story for another archive keeper to tell. The end, or perhaps just the beginning.